There is an invisible wall standing between what men actually need to feel fulfilled and what modern relationship culture keeps telling them they should become. This wall is rarely named, yet it quietly shapes countless misunderstandings between men and women. Men are encouraged to open up more, explain themselves more, analyze their emotions more, and translate their inner world into language that feels familiar and comfortable to others. Over time, many men begin to feel as if they are being reshaped into a softer, more emotionally expressive version of themselves, almost like a girlfriend role inside their own relationship. The intention behind this push often sounds kind and progressive, but the effect can be deeply alienating. Men are not broken machines waiting to be fixed. They do not lack depth simply because they express it differently. What they need most is not correction, but understanding. Their nature does not require constant translation or improvement to be valid. Yet many relationship conflicts are born from the assumption that male care is insufficient unless it mirrors a more verbal, emotionally detailed style. When a man shows love through consistency, presence, protection, or action, it is often overlooked because it does not arrive wrapped in the expected emotional language. Slowly, he is treated as if something essential is missing. This misunderstanding creates a quiet exhaustion. A man who feels constantly evaluated learns to explain himself endlessly, to justify his instincts, and to defend his way of loving. The more he explains, the less seen he feels. The relationship becomes a classroom where he is always the student, never the expert of his own inner world. Over time, this erodes not only attraction, but also self-respect. He may comply outwardly, yet inwardly he retreats, sensing that who he is naturally will never quite be enough. The tragedy is that this wall blocks genuine closeness on both sides. When a man feels accepted only conditionally, he cannot fully relax into the relationship. When his silence is treated as a flaw and his steadiness as emotional absence, his heart learns to stay guarded. To truly understand men, one must look beyond cultural scripts and listen to the mechanics of how they think, bond, and endure. Only then does the wall begin to crack, revealing not a problem to be fixed, but a nature to be respected. One of the most destructive dynamics in modern relationships begins quietly, almost invisibly, under the disguise of love and good intentions. A woman meets a man she feels drawn to, not because he is perfect, but because there is something alive and grounded in him. His habits, passions, and even his rough edges form the core of that attraction. Yet, over time, a subtle shift occurs. Instead of meeting him as he is, she begins to see him as a project. The changes start small and seemingly harmless: different clothes, new social circles, more refined hobbies, fewer hours spent on things that don't fit the image of the ideal partner. At the heart of this behavior is not cruelty, but a quiet refusal to accept a man's true nature when it does not align with a preferred template. The language used is often loving. It sounds like growth, improvement, or mutual evolution. But the underlying message is clear: who you are is close, but not quite enough. Over time, this message cuts deeper than open criticism ever could. The man begins to trade authenticity for approval, believing that love is something he must earn by becoming more palatable. Consider the story of Ethan. When he met Sarah, he spent his weekends in a garage restoring old muscle cars. It was his form of meditation, a space where his mind quieted and his sense of purpose sharpened. Sarah admired his dedication at first, but slowly replaced those hours with gallery openings, curated dinners, new friends, and a wardrobe that matched a lifestyle magazine. 3 years later, Ethan looked impressive on the outside. He was polished, socially fluent, and widely admired. Inside, he felt hollow. The spark that once grounded him had vanished, and with it, the quiet confidence that first drew Sarah in. This is the paradox many relationships fall into. By reshaping a man to fit an ideal, The very essence that created attraction is dismantled. What remains is an empty shell, agreeable and compliant, but disconnected from his masculine core. A man does not thrive when he is valued for his pliability. He thrives when his essence and passions are respected. Without that respect, the project may be completed, but the man is lost. For many men, physical intimacy is not merely a biological urge or a momentary release. It is one of the few spaces where the armor comes off completely. In that closeness, a man is not required to lead, provide, protect, or solve anything. He is simply allowed to exist and be accepted. Modern narratives often reduce male desire to something shallow, while portraying women as the emotional ones. This false division quietly damages connection, because it denies the truth that intimacy is often a man's most honest emotional language. Through touch and closeness, men communicate love, loyalty, and trust without words. It is where they feel chosen not for what they do, but for who they are. When intimacy flows freely, without conditions or calculations, it becomes the foundation on which a man feels safe enough to invest deeper into the relationship. He feels grounded, valued, and emotionally anchored. From that place, he becomes more present, more patient, and more willing to carry weight for the future. Problems begin when intimacy is transformed into a negotiation tool, when it becomes a reward for good behavior, a currency exchanged for favors, or a bargaining chip in conflict. The meaning of that connection collapses. A man no longer feels loved, he feels managed. The unspoken message becomes, do this and you will be accepted. Fail and you will be denied. This creates a deep wound because rejection in this space is not interpreted as a simple mood or timing issue, but as a refusal of his core self. When intimacy is withheld to influence behavior, a man's confidence erodes. He begins to retreat, not out of indifference, but out of self-protection. The bridge that once connected him emotionally starts to feel unsafe to cross. Over time, this withdrawal is misread as emotional distance, when in reality it is the result of feeling emotionally rejected at the deepest level. When intimacy is offered without preconditions, something powerful happens. A man regains strength. He becomes steadier, more resilient, and more capable of being a reliable support. It is not weakness that emerges from acceptance, but stability. And from that stability, a man is able to give far more than he ever could when he feels measured or traded with. Male friendship often appears puzzling, even unsettling, to those who expect emotional closeness to be proven through long conversations and detailed sharing. A woman might ask, half amused and half confused, what two men talked about during hours spent together, only to hear the answer, nothing. This response is usually honest. For men, connection does not always require narration. Support is built through shared presence, synchronized activity, and the quiet reassurance that someone is there beside you without needing access to your inner world. Men process stress and pressure differently. Instead of dissecting feelings, they often need space where their nervous system can settle without additional emotional input. Doing something together, fishing, working, driving, or simply sitting in silence, allows thoughts to align naturally. There is no demand to perform vulnerability or produce insights. The bond forms through rhythm, not revelation. Take the example of Jack and Ryan. When Ryan's business was collapsing, he did not want advice, analysis, or emotional probing. Jack invited him on a fishing trip. They spent hours in near silence, broken only by casual remarks about the weather or the water. No questions were asked about fears or plans, no solutions were offered. Yet when Ryan returned, he felt lighter, steadier, and less alone. That silent presence did what no conversation could. It gave him permission to exhale. This form of connection is often misinterpreted as emotional coldness or avoidance. The absence of confessions is mistaken for a lack of depth. In reality, male friendship is an architecture of presence. It communicates solidarity without explanations, loyalty without drama, and understanding without interrogation. It reminds a man that he is not alone in carrying his burdens, even when no words are exchanged. When this dynamic is misunderstood, men are pressured to replace it with verbal processing that feels unnatural and draining. The result is not greater closeness, but quiet resistance. To truly support a man, one must recognize that silence can be a form of care, and action can be a language of empathy. But when silence is not respected, and emotional access is demanded for the sake of curiosity rather than care, another dangerous dynamic emerges, one that disguises itself as concern while quietly eroding trust. Not all requests for emotional openness come from a place of true empathy. Sometimes, what is labeled as care is actually a form of emotional voyeurism. It is the desire to look inside another person's pain, not to help heal it, but to feel something, to gather stories, or to create drama that can be shared, analyzed, or subtly displayed as social currency. Problems become episodes, and suffering turns into content. Men sense this instinctively, even when it is carefully disguised behind soft words and concerned expressions. When details are asked for with hunger rather than patience, a man feels exposed rather than supported. His experiences become topics of discussion, not burdens being held with him. Advice is offered not because it will truly help, but because it keeps the story alive. In some cases, solutions are unconsciously avoided because resolution would end the emotional stimulation. This creates a deep internal alarm. The line between empathy and curiosity blurs, and the man begins to guard himself. Trust collapses the moment vulnerability is treated like entertainment. A man who opens up and later hears his fears reframed, retold, or indirectly referenced in social settings learns a painful lesson. His inner world is not safe. What he shared in confidence has become a spectacle, or worse, a tool. Once this happens, silence is no longer avoidance, but self-preservation. True emotional intimacy does not require excavation. It respects boundaries instead of storming them. A man needs to know that when he speaks, his words will not be consumed, dissected, or used as leverage later. He needs to choose the moment of sharing, not be pushed into it for someone else's emotional appetite. Vulnerability cannot be forced without consequences. When a man feels that his inner life is protected rather than mined, he relaxes. He shares because he wants to, not because he is pressured in that safety. Closeness deepens naturally, without it. Every question feels like a trap, and every conversation carries risk. This fear of being misunderstood or overanalyzed grows even stronger when simple words are no longer allowed to mean what they say, leading directly into one of the most common and exhausting conflicts between men and women. One of the most draining traps in male and female communication is the belief that every sentence must contain a hidden meaning. Many men communicate in straight lines. Their words are meant to describe reality as it is, not to hint at emotional subplots or symbolic messages. When a man says he is hungry, he is usually talking about food, not expressing dissatisfaction with domestic life or emotional neglect. Yet his simplicity is often met with analysis, decoding, and imagined implications that were never intended. This difference in communication style creates a quiet but persistent tension. A man sends a short reply because he is focused on a task, and it is interpreted as emotional distance. He reacts calmly to a situation, and it is taken as indifference. Over time, ordinary interactions become landmines. A simple photo, a brief message, or a neutral tone can spiral into a day filled with unspoken resentment. The man, confused by reactions he never anticipated, begins to feel that no matter what he says, it will be translated into something else. Home, which should be a place of rest, turns into a decoding chamber. The man expends enormous mental energy trying to predict how his words will be interpreted. This is exhausting, especially when his life outside the relationship already demands constant problem-solving and performance. What he longs for is one place where clarity is enough, where everything is fine, is accepted as truth. And I need time is understood as a request for recovery, not withdrawal. When words are taken literally, trust grows, predictability returns. The man feels safe because he is not constantly on trial for meanings he never intended to communicate. Simplicity becomes a gift, not a flaw. This does not erase emotional depth, it protects it, by allowing words to mean what they say. Space opens for genuine calm and connection. For men, respect is not a secondary detail in love. It is its backbone. Love without respect feels like pity. And pity slowly drains a man's strength. Respect is communicated in quiet, everyday moments through trust in his competence and belief in his judgment. When a man takes responsibility, fixes something, or makes a decision, he needs to feel that his partner sees him as capable. Constant second-guessing, corrections, or subtle doubts may sound practical, but they land as a message of inadequacy. Over time, this erodes initiative. A man who feels trusted grows. A man who feels monitored shrinks. This is why modern encouragement of vulnerability must be handled with care. Many men have learned the hard way that what is shared in moments of openness can later resurface as ammunition in conflict. When fears or uncertainties are met with anxiety, criticism, or silent judgment, vulnerability becomes dangerous. A man does not hide his worries because he lacks depth, but because he feels responsible for emotional stability. If revealing a crack creates more chaos, he learns to carry the weight alone. True safety is not found in forcing honesty, but in receiving it calmly, without panic or reproach. Men also express love through contribution. Much of their devotion lives in unnoticed actions: checking the locks, maintaining the car, planning for the future, absorbing stress so others can feel secure. These acts are not dramatic or poetic, but they are deeply meaningful. When they are ignored or taken for granted, a man feels invisible. A simple acknowledgement transforms duty into purpose. Feeling appreciated fuels his desire to do more, not out of obligation, but out of pride and connection. Equally important is a man's need for personal space and silence. This is not an escape from the relationship, but a return to balance. In solitude, hobbies, or quiet focus, he processes pressure and restores clarity. When this space is respected, he returns more present and attentive. When it is questioned or invaded, withdrawal deepens. Silence, for a man, is often maintenance, not abandonment. Real harmony emerges when differences are no longer treated as flaws to be corrected. Men and women are not opposing forces, but complementary systems. When a woman stops seeing a man as an unfinished version of herself and begins to recognize his distinct way of loving, something shifts. Conflicts soften into cooperation. Control gives way to trust. What once felt like distance becomes stability. If you are a man, reflect on where you have felt misunderstood. If you are a woman, consider how male behavior may already be expressing care in ways you were taught to overlook. Share your thoughts in the comments. Conversations like these are where real understanding begins. And if you want deeper, honest insights into male and female psychology without romantic filters,